All right, what is up and welcome to episode number 18, and this is a Week 10 recap here. We had a kind of another wild week of college football. There's a lot of games to talk about, a lot of games we'll kind of briefly go over, and then I know we got a decent group that we're going to go into more detail about here. There were a lot of good games among the top teams, and there were even some good ones with the bottom teams, so we're going to start off with what was game day in Alabama, and Alabama picked up a big top 15 win against LSU 42-28, and Milroe played well for them. I know Jaden Daniels played well for LSU, and it was kind of what everyone expected. It was a kind of a higher scoring game, and both offenses played well, but in the end, Alabama's defense, I think, was just a little bit better. And I'm not really sure what the stats said on it, so I'll go over to Reg here, and he'll give you guys more detail on this one.
Yeah, just as you said, that was right here. One of the things I had is Bama's their defensive edge won the game late. And LSU actually played better than I expected them to play in this one. I did bet against them, and that worked out, but they still played better than I expected. They were in this game for a long time. Jalen Milroe had probably the best game of his career in this game. 219 passing, but that's not where it came from. On the ground, Jalen Milroe, 20 carries, 155 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
I know a lot of LSU people were upset because they weren't spying him or anything, and they were running a lot of zone on defense, which if you run zone and your linebackers, they leave to do their job in the zone.
It's wide open.
Yeah, the quarterback run, that's when that comes open.
Jaden Daniels also had a good game on the ground. 11 carries, 163 yards, a touchdown.
That
so
dude,
he's always running all over the place.
He's big time.
LSU was in this game, honestly, until Jaden Daniels got hurt at the start of the fourth quarter. I think the offensive side, LSU probably didn't really have a complete game plan on what to do if that happened. Because Jaden Daniels, if I've seen anyone take just crazy hits and get up from it this year, it's been him. So he finally ate one of them and couldn't get up too fast.
Yeah, that's just one of those things, especially when you need to come back and you're behind, and then your quarterback and a quarterback that is that important to their team. When a guy like that goes down, you can't really come back from that.
Yeah, so big win for Alabama, and they continue to prove all the people in the first 2 weeks what they were saying about them wrong. And the rest of the way for Bama, they go to Kentucky after this, and then they have Chattanooga at home.
There it is, the little warm-up game before probably Auburn.
Yeah, and then they have the Iron Bowl at the end of the year. And they go to Auburn, so that's always a tough one.
Yeah,
you never know what could happen there.
That's always one they can sneak up on you. Auburn's not...
They kept Georgia within 7 at home.
Auburn hasn't been great this year, but they're a team that can definitely beat Bama.
LSU, on the other hand, they have Florida at home after this. I don't know what's going to happen there, honestly. Florida's been playing just very up and down.
Yeah, you just don't know which Florida team's going to show up.
Yeah. Then they have Georgia State at home. That should be a blowout. And then they have Texas A&M at home. So 3 more home games for LSU.
A good chance for them to finish 9-3 probably. I mean, they probably took themselves out of the SEC West, but that's still, they can finish with a strong record and be in a good bowl game. Me and Reg think they're going to be playing Notre Dame to end the year. I could see it.
I'd like to see that.
If they're both at 3 losses, they'd match up BK with his old team, and we could have a fun game there.
I want to mention Malik Neighbors had a great game. 10 catches, 171 yards, and a touchdown. That touchdown was the first touchdown of the game, and it kind of kicked off the game. LSU got a quick stop and then immediately scored, and people thought maybe this was going in the wrong direction for Alabama. Maybe what happened to them, I don't know how many weeks ago at this point, but what happened when Texas came into town, they didn't let that happen. And I think that their defense has really just stepped up. Their whole team play has really just stepped up. They finally figured out what to do with the quarterback. Their scheme has changed, and they're running the ball with Jalen Milroe in this game. I think that's a huge plus for their offense, and he's going to continue to do that and have success.
If you can run with your quarterback, it just gives you another blocker and a whole other dimension to it, because then linebackers can't give as much honor to the passing game, and they can't give as much honor to the running backs, and they got a whole other thing to think about. And it's just the type of thing that can boost your offense even by a couple points a game, and that could be the difference in the end. I think that's all we got about Alabama LSU. It was another good matchup between those two, and low-key, that's one of my favorite rivalries in college football. They're both good most years, and it's always a good game, and it's just two great programs going at it every year.
That's one of those games I definitely want to go to at some point.
That would be an awesome game to be at either one of those stadiums.
I would honestly prefer it to be at LSU.
I know. I mean, you always hear that one. A lot of people say that's the best environment to go to. So
I've heard a lot about LSU.
The next game on our list is in the Big 12, Texas and Kansas State. Texas found themselves in a little bit of a nail-biter here as Malik Murphy, their backup, he played all right, not great, and Will Howard and company played big for Kansas State, and they brought it down to the wire, man. I know Reg will bring us deeper into this one, but that was some exciting Big 12 action this week.
Yeah, when I first seen the score on this game, it was 17-0 when I first checked in on this game. 17-0 Texas. And I was like, all right, Texas is gonna roll over Kansas State. They're gonna kill them. But then the next time I checked this game, I think it was tied and we were going into overtime. So Kansas State obviously found a way to come back. And honestly, I thought Kansas State was about to win this game at one point.
They had opportunities, man. They were close. They were right there. They could have had it.
Yeah, it was kind of opposite game plans or opposite results from these teams, as one of them had a lot of success through the air. Kansas State, they had 3 or 4 guys at 70 yards. They didn't get to 80 though. So they really spread the rock around. Keegan Johnson had 7 catches, 70 yards, a touchdown. Phillip Brooks had 5 catches, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ben Sinnott had 5 catches, 69 yards, and Jace Brown had 4 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown.
That's about as balanced as you can be.
Yeah, definitely. Texas, on the other hand, ran the ball for the most part, and I think a lot of that had to do with Quinn Ewers not being in this game. But Jonathan Brooks, 22 carries, 112 yards, 5.1 average, and a touchdown. CJ Baxter, that's their true freshman running back, I believe. 10 carries, 90 yards, a touchdown. So that's a great day from him. And Texas controlled the ball here, and Texas had 1 extra turnover than Kansas State, and I think that's why this game was really close, and that's why they were able to get back in this one was turnovers. But Texas hangs on. They keep their playoff and national championship hopes alive. And especially this year, I don't think any team is just killing everybody besides Michigan, and they might not even be doing it rightfully.
Yeah, I mean, and they haven't done it against one of the top teams yet, so we haven't seen them again, which obviously we know they're good and whatever, but we just haven't seen them do it against the top team yet. So, yeah, college football is wide open, and Texas is one of those teams that can very well win it.
I was about to say, yeah. I think if you're going to win the national championship this year, you're going to have 1 or 2 of those games where you could have lost, but you just pulled away in the end, and that just happens. You see that a lot of times with TCU last year. There were so many close games that they just won in the end, and that's why they ended up making the playoffs. So,
yeah, nobody was really sure what's going to happen here at the end of the year. I mean, pretty much anything could still. There's still about 10, 11 teams that can make the playoff and make something happen. So we'll see.
You even look back at Georgia last year. They almost slipped up against Missouri. In the same game.
Kent State was kind of closer, I remember, at one point, too.
I always forget about that one.
Yeah. College football is just, the talent level is it's evening out, I feel like, over the whole scheme of things. And I don't know if that's...
I feel like it has to do with the transfer portal.
I was just going to say, I think the transfer portal is the biggest reason for that. Just because there's guys that normally, there's good guys that weren't playing on certain teams, and now they're going to be playing other places. So I think the transfer portal is definitely the biggest part of that, and there's just more guys playing, basically.
Texas, what they have left, after this, they go to TCU, and then after that, they go to Iowa State, and then they have Texas Tech at home. So they got 2 more in-state games, so there's always a little bit more tension around that because you're playing for recruits right there.
Yeah, and you know the Texas teams are proud. They don't want to lose to each other.
Yeah. So, but honestly, I think they should finish the season out, and they're probably a playoff team at this point.
As long as they can win out, they control their own destiny. I mean, it's really up to them.
And then Kansas State, on the other hand, they have Baylor at home after this. Then they go to Kansas, which that should be a fun game.
That'll be a really fun rivalry.
And then Iowa State at home. So I think Kansas State could really finish the season a lot better than a lot of people expected.
Yeah, big time. I wasn't high on them at all to start the year, and 9-3 is definitely a possibility.
And for Kansas State, a team that had a lot of superstars last year that they left. You don't expect them to just come back and have another 8-9 win season.
But they're right. They're knocking on the door again.
Yeah. So definitely a promising future if you're a Kansas State fan.
The next game we go to the SEC and we got Ole Miss and Texas A&M. Ole Miss was at home and they beat A&M 38-35, which A&M's talent level really showed in this one. They showed why they can compete with everyone because they've got the guys on their roster. They've got the team that can do it. It's just a matter of if they actually do it. And sitting at 5-4 right now shows that they haven't this year again. Jimbo's he just can't seem to figure it out with
Is it time to pull the plug on Jimbo?
I think it's been time. I think a lot of people have thought it's been time. Yeah. It's just that's a lot of money they're gonna have to pay him, and that's a big change when you're that invested in a guy. That's a big change to make. But Ole Miss, man, they've looked really good this year. I was high on them at the beginning of the year. Their offense is just consistently good with Lane Kiffin leading them. They're 8-1 at the moment with just a loss to Bama, and that doesn't do great for them in the SEC West because they would need Bama to lose twice. But they're still at a great spot for their program, and they're going to be in a New Year's Six Bowl, and I think we're going to see them play some fun games here down the stretch, and their program's at a really good spot right now.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin has Ole Miss at a great spot, and if he stays there, I think Ole Miss could be something very promising in the future.
The next one, then, is one that, I'm sorry to Reg, I got to bring it up, but Clemson at 4-4, they took down the Irish this week, who were ranked at 15, 31-23. And Dabo, after the game, man, he was excited, which I don't know why he wants us to buy stock in Clemson, considering they started high to start the year, and now they're about as low as they could have been. So that doesn't make any sense. But Clemson,
I think he was trying to say maybe it was a good time now.
Yeah, saying he thinks they're going to start climbing again. I think they're just this year's not a year to be yelling anything like that when you're 5-4, but it was a good win for Clemson. Just like A&M, it shows they've got a talented team. It shows they can beat pretty much anyone. They played close with Florida State earlier this year. I mean, they're not a bad team. They just haven't played great in the wrong times this year. So Notre Dame falls to 7-3. Freeman, he doesn't have them at a bad spot right now. People will hate on him, but 7-3 is not a bad spot. They're in very well reach a 9-3 and playing LSU or someone like we said earlier in a great bowl game to end the year. So it's not like Notre Dame's got anything to be down about. It's just obviously you don't want to lose a game like this.
I watched this whole game all the way through, and Notre Dame definitely killed themselves in a lot of different aspects. Clemson tried to do the same thing at the end of the game, which they've done the past few weeks. But in the end, Notre Dame made a lot more mistakes. And I don't think you're ever going to win when you fumble a punt return inside the 10, give the other team the ball, and throw a pick six in the same game.
Yeah, that's pretty much giving them 2 scores. That's not good.
No.
Tough loss for the Irish. Good win for Clemson. I mean, there's not really a whole lot more to be said for that one. Back to the SEC then. This was a good one, kind of unexpectedly. 2-6 at the time, I guess. Arkansas went on the road to Florida and beat them 39-36. So Arkansas has been in all kinds of close games this year. They've had multiple 3-point games, and finally they're on the winning side of one, and they get the Gators. And it's just like me and Reg referenced earlier, Florida, you just don't know what you're going to get every week. All of a sudden they lose to Arkansas, and a couple weeks ago they're beating Tennessee by 2 scores. So, you just don't know what you're going to get with Florida. I don't really know where their program is at the moment. But Arkansas, man, that's just good for them to finally get over the hump in one of these close games. They lost to Bama by 3. I know they had a couple other real close losses.
Coming off, a 7-3 loss?
Something like that. So they're just they've been right there in so many games. They could probably just as easily be 6-3 as they are 3-6. So that was a good win for them this week. A big game then between the 2 of the Armed Forces teams. Army got 8-0 Air Force. They took them down 23-3. So that was a big upset for Army, and I know they're excited about that one. Air Force was riding high, and they kind of looked like the clear favorite of all the Armed Forces teams. But Army kind of took it to them. Air Force made some mistakes, and Army's defense was absolutely all over them. They forced 6 turnovers. And when you have turned the ball over 6 times trying to run the option, it's just not going to work. So Army with the big win, and Army is sitting at 3-6, and Air Force falls to 8-1.
That's tough.
Which that's going to probably kill Air Force's hopes at a New Year's Six Bowl, which that's tough for them. Another game here between some group of 6 teams. We got Memphis and USF. Memphis beats USF 59-50, so that's exciting stuff. That's a lot of points on the board. I know they've had some fun games in the past in the American, and Seth Hennigan for Memphis had 5 total touchdowns, so that's a big-time game, and it's just a fun game in college football. You get games like that every week. You can sneak in there, and they're just always fun to watch.
That just shows you can't really compare 2 games and say this is how this team plays or whatever. South Florida holds Alabama to 17 points.
And then Memphis scores 59 on them. Yeah. No, transitive property in football is about the worst way to go about it. Another game then is one of the top ones of the week, and it was Missouri at Georgia. Georgia beat Mizzou 30-21 and kept their undefeated streak rolling. This was one game where a lot of people thought that they could maybe finally slip up, and Missouri's been playing well this year. They got weapons they could have used to beat them, but in the end, Georgia just outplayed them a little bit. And field goal at the end, I believe, is what I was seeing. That kind of sealed it up for him and made it a 9-point game. I'm going to go over to Reg here. I know he's got more details about this one, but overall, it's just a good win for Georgia.
I think Missouri really showed the whole college football world that they're for real.
Yeah, they're here to compete.
'Cause they hung in this one till the very end. They had 2 picks, and Georgia didn't turn over the ball at all, actually. And they were still in this game until the very end. They didn't let Georgia pull away or anything. Georgia, on the other hand, played a very clean game, and they didn't make any mistakes. And you're just not really going to lose if the other team makes mistakes, and you don't, and you're that caliber of team. Carson Beck continues to impress. Like, he just hasn't really had – I think people have been waiting for, like, that game where it's like Carson Beck isn't it.
He's the reason they slip up. Exactly.
But he's shown to be just a very good he seems like a veteran out there, honestly.
Just runs the offense well. He just does his job, gets the ball to guys, lets them make plays. The O-line always plays well. They can get it to a bunch of different guys, and he's doing it.
Stats-wise, though, it was kind of similar for these teams. Missouri threw the ball for 212. Georgia threw the ball for 254. Rushing, Missouri ran the ball for 151 yards. Georgia ran the ball for 131 yards. So it wasn't really anything crazy with the total yards difference. Georgia only had around 23. Yeah, Georgia had 23 more total yards than them. But, yeah, Missouri.
Mistakes, man, turnovers.
Yeah, it was just a very classic back-and-forth football game, and I think it was a very good showing from both of these teams. Missouri did everything they could to try to win this game, but when you make a few mistakes like that, it's hard to be a team that doesn't make any mistakes.
Games in Athens, Georgia are always fun.
Oh, yeah,
that crowd was bumping.
Yeah, Missouri were having some struggles with communication, and I think anyone would in that environment. But Georgia, they are undefeated at this point. I'm not sure who expected that, and if they expected that. They're undefeated, and they have Ole Miss at home.
I know their last couple are big ones. I know that.
Then they go to Tennessee, and then at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, so 2 top 15, top 20 games and a rivalry game. That's not an easy thing to get through here at the end for them.
Yeah, so Georgia going to be a fun team to watch for the next 2 weeks at least. Missouri, on the other hand, they're sitting at
7-2 now.
Sitting at 7-2. I like what I've seen from Missouri at this point, actually.
I agree.
7-2, you can call that what you want, but for Missouri, 7-2 with how they've played, this is a good season for Eli
their only
losses are
LSU and Georgia.
Yeah.
So it's not like I think they've beaten the teams they wanted to beat, and they've lost to a couple teams that are probably better than them, especially
and they haven't gotten killed.
Exactly.
They were in both of those games.
They were within 10 points on both. So yeah, Missouri, they're definitely at a good spot.
I think it's going to be another fun game to watch next week with Tennessee. They have Tennessee at home, and then they have Florida at home, and then they go to Arkansas. So in my opinion, I think Missouri's going to win 10 games this year.
Really? I feel 9-3 with maybe a bowl win, but yeah, I mean 10 games is very attainable. Just the Tennessee game, I think they're going to be lacking a little bit off of Georgia week, but and Tennessee's defense is just they're the type of team that can they can combat Missouri well.
That's definitely me being very optimistic.
Yeah. But 10 wins, yeah, that's easily attainable. And a 10-2 season for Missouri, probably finishing in the top 10. That's a great year. Exactly, that's a great year for them. On to the Big 12 then. We had another good one in the Big 12. And Oklahoma goes down again. Oklahoma State beats them in the final edition of Bedlam, 27-24. It was just Oklahoma kind of hit a little lull here in their season. They started so well. They had the win over Texas. And then there's just been some weeks here where they just haven't been playing great.
Yeah, you hate to see a rivalry like this go away after 112 years.
So many good games, too.
It ends in a great way. And Oklahoma State, I don't know where that field goal post is at this point.
It ended up in some body of water. I don't know.
Why does it always end up in the water?
It ended up in a body of water, of course.
But Oklahoma just took themselves out of the playoff. I think we could say that.
Yeah.
And a huge win for Oklahoma State as they're looking to go for the Big 12 title at this point.
Oh, they're right in position. If it would end today, it'd be them in Texas.
Who would have thought?
I know. Especially after the early loss to South Alabama.
And I know you were talking about Ali Gordon.
He's a dog, man.
But that wasn't even, I wouldn't even say that.
I was going to say, what did he do this week?
Ali Gordon, 33 carries, so another workhorse game for him, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns. So another great game for him. Oklahoma, on the other hand, they didn't run the ball terrible, but they just didn't run the ball too much. I think he's a sophomore, Gavin Sawchuk, 13 carries, 111 yards, a touchdown. So that's a good game.
Yeah, I was going to say, those are pretty good stats.
Give the guy some carries. But total yards-wise, Oklahoma had 492 total yards. Oklahoma State, 480. This was definitely more of an offensive game. There was 3 turnovers from Oklahoma and 1 turnover from Oklahoma State, and I think, obviously, that is...
Those are always, we talk about it so many times, but it's true,
It's the most important thing in the game.
You just give away possessions.
Yeah, 100%. In this game, Oklahoma State was able to stay two-dimensional, and I think that's what really made them succeed in this one. They threw for 334 yards, which I don't think they've been slinging the ball around too much.
No.
They've been more of a grounded pound with Ali Gordon. Yeah, they were able to give one running back 33 carries and also throw the ball 43 times. And that just shows that they almost doubled Oklahoma in possession time. They had 37 minutes of possession time, Oklahoma only 22.
That's another thing that comes from those turnovers is just giving the other team the ball, not letting your offense be on the field at all.
And 2 of those turnovers were fumbles. One of them was a pick. Oklahoma State also had a pick.
Defenses get tired. Defenses make mistakes at that point, too. And that's also where the running game with Ali Gordon comes in. They just wear him down with that many rushes with one guy like that.
Oklahoma State kind of spread it out. There was 3 guys that had some good receiving day. Rashad Owens, 10 catches, 136 yards. Brennan Presley, 8 catches, 97 yards. Leon Johnson III, 5 catches, 70 yards. So 3 guys that had pretty good games there. And Oklahoma State pulls off the last one. I think Oklahoma State fans are always going to just have a smile on their face when they think back to this one. And I think Oklahoma fans, especially the old ones that have been for this rivalry all of their lives, I think Oklahoma, they're just always going to have that chip on their shoulder about this one.
You just leave with a bad taste.
That is exactly what I was trying to say.
They'll get another shot at them at some point. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I'm sure this rivalry will revive itself at some point. You can't just let this one go away.
No.
Especially in state like that. But Oklahoma, the rest of the way, they just took themselves out of the playoffs and they don't have another ranked matchup. So they have West Virginia at home. That could even be a slip.
West Virginia's been dangerous this year, and Oklahoma not playing well. Yeah, that's another game they could lose.
They go to BYU. That could be another scary one for them. And then Texas TCU at home. It says Texas Christian on here. I don't ever want
That's not 3 games that are like guarantees at all, especially the way they're playing right now. You know the BYU crowd will be excited. They got Oklahoma coming to town.
Oklahoma State, on the other hand, they also don't have another ranked matchup. They go to UCF, then to Houston, and then BYU at home. So definitely manageable for Oklahoma State. And who would have thought maybe a 10-win Oklahoma State team
and we see them taking on Texas in the Big 12 championship.
That would be insane.
Now more action from this week in the Big Ten this time. Illinois on the road at Minnesota. They beat them 27-26 on a late touchdown. It's just the Big Ten, I don't know. The West, man, it's all messed up every year. You never really know who's going to beat who. Those games are always kind of a crapshoot, and Illinois showed it this week. They haven't played great this year, and Minnesota's played solid at times. Illinois was 3-5, and Minnesota was 5-3 going in, but Illinois gets the win, and their program, both these programs they're always just seem right in the middle.
Yeah, very right in the middle.
I don't want to call them bad, but I don't want to call them good. They're just
Well,
Right
you
in
can't
the
call
middle.
them bad because they could upset your team at any point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The next game then, more Big Ten action, and this one, as classic as you can get, Iowa on the road at Northwestern, and Iowa wins 10-7. Iowa improves to 7-2 on the year, 10-7, man. And the funny thing about this one is they played this game at Wrigley Field, so Wrigley, has baseball games there all year. This was the 7th highest scoring game at Wrigley Field this year, and it was the only football game played there. That's insane.
I don't even have words.
I know, literally. There's not much else to say about it. Iowa's defense played great. Northwestern's defense played great. The big difference was Iowa's kicker nailed a 53-yard field goal to win it. And
I would really love to see what an elite offense does at Iowa.
exactly. They could be. Their defense is so good. Imagine if they had an offense that even puts up 30 points a game instead of 20. Like, they could be easily 8-1, 9-0 at this point. So Iowa just needs kind of that one missing piece.
Yeah, that could be another huge player in the Big Ten if they could get an offense.
Big
Just
time.
any sort of offense.
Literally anything. Next game, another really close one. Houston on the road at Baylor. Some Big 12 action. Houston beats Baylor 25-24 on a 2-point conversion at OT, which I love. I'm a big fan of that, going for 2 in the win. And Houston, they've had a lot of close ones. They're kind of like Arkansas. There's been games they could have won. They lost to Texas by 7 earlier this year, but they also beat West Virginia on a Hail Mary, so they've had some fun ones this year, and that's a big win for them at Baylor.
I have a question for you, though, when you say that. If you have the clearly more talented team, do you go for 2? Like, you think you're going to control that overtime?
No.
Okay.
I'm saying in this situation especially.
Like even teams?
Yeah. Like Houston and Baylor, that's a pretty much even matchup.
Yeah.
And especially when you're on the road, too, you don't want to keep playing in a hostile
That makes
environment.
sense.
You don't want to keep letting the crowd get louder. And that's the type of situation I'm at
Definitely.
more where I love going for 2 in the win. And Houston pulled it off, and that was a good win for them this week.
I agree. You got that chance to win right there. You may as well take it.
UCF and Cincinnati then, another Big 12 game, which that sounds funny. UCF and Cincinnati as a Big 12 matchup, but in their first year of that, and UCF I know has been successful against Cincinnati in recent years, especially even when Luke Fickell was at UC, they were just having trouble with UCF. They seem to get on them every year, but UC falls to 2-7 now after a 28-26 loss to UCF, who is 4-5 on the year. John Reese Plumlee played well for UCF, and I know Oob was at the game. He said it was a good game. It was close. Cincinnati went for 2 to try to tie it and just couldn't pull it off. So, good close win for UCF, and just another one of those college football games you just can randomly turn on the TV at any moment during the day and find a good game.
So many good games to watch this week.
Exactly. Speaking of great games to watch, if you like offense, I think everybody expected from about week 1 this season for this one to be fireworks. And number 5 Washington on the road at USC wins 52-42. And I'm just going to let Reg get into some stats because I know there's got to be some big ones from this game.
So, if the only thing I told you right now was USC fired their defensive coordinator after this game, what do you think? What would you tell me happened?
I would guess Washington scored about 55 points and Penix had about 400 yards.
It was the points, yes. Washington 52 points, they beat USC 52-42. But Washington found some sort of run game. I think it shows that you can pretty much do whatever you want to USC's defense at this point.
That's why it's called Swiss cheese with holes in it.
I think last week, or I've talked about Washington a lot. I talked about their rankings last week. I definitely talked about their ranking last week. They were in the 80s, 90s, 100s in rushing. 316 yards.
That is just pure domination. I know their one running back had a big game.
7.5 yards per carry. And yes, their running back is my player of the week with Dylan Johnson, 26 carries, 256 yards, 9.8 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns.
I don't understand how.
Best game of his life by far.
Because USC has talented guys on their roster, so how can they be put in that bad of positions, or how can they not know what they're supposed to be doing in their positions? It's just something big time was going on wrong there.
We'll see what happens after this to USC's defense, but you can't guarantee anything at this point. They just fired the guy running things, so
And a part of the blame has always been on Lincoln Riley, and it's valid because he was with this D coordinator at Oklahoma, and this was always Lincoln Riley's problem at Oklahoma. His defense was never consistent enough to take him to that next level, and once again he finds himself in that same situation.
And I don't think anyone really seen this, but USC also had a great day on the ground, but they just limited themselves with carries. They were averaging 7.5 yards per carry, but only had 203 rushing yards. And their running back their leading rusher only had 11 carries, and he averaged 11.5 yards per carry.
See, that's one, I feel like we have about every week a couple of times where we say, why are we not feeding this guy more? Like, yeah, maybe it was effective because you didn't use him that often, but when you're getting that many yards a carry, you gotta get him.
I was also going to say, when your defense is that bad, you want to keep the ball. You don't want to have 3 and outs that last a minute and a half.
That's another part where I blame Lincoln Riley is I think he has too much fun trying to just score 50 points with his offense every game. Like, he'll leave most games happy as long as his offense put up big numbers is the way I look at it. And he's got to prove me wrong, like, to show that that's not what it is, because at this point in his career, that's kind of all I watch with him.
But overall, this was a very close game, actually, until the very end. I think just at the start of the fourth quarter, or just getting into the fourth quarter, Washington started to throw some punches and pull away. But 52-42, a 10-point win for Washington. The turnover margin was equal, 1-1, so no real advantage there. But in my opinion, USC just keeps their defense is absolutely killing them at this point.
Yeah, that's the problem, man.
And they could be, in my opinion, 9-1 and probably should be 9-1 with average defensive play.
Because their offense is that good. It is effective. I will give Lincoln Riley that.
Their offense is good.
Is that he always has a good offense.
Yes.
But it just isn't going to ever win you as many games as you need if you want to go actually to that final level, which is the playoff or a national championship spot.
And I guess Washington, once they started to have success on the ground, they're like, we don't need to throw the ball 45 times with Penix. He only had 256 yards, and they only threw the ball 30 times.
Yeah,
22 for 30, efficient day for Penix. But
there's no need to keep slinging it around if you can keep the ball out of USC's hands as much as possible and just keep controlling the clock.
Penix had 2 touchdowns and a pick, so not the best day from him, but definitely not a bad day. Washington, to this point, they're undefeated, the only undefeated team in the Pac-12. They have Utah at home, so that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
And then at Oregon State right after that, and then Washington State at home. So in my opinion, absolutely nothing guaranteed.
Not one bit.
They could lose 3 games straight to finish.
Yeah, neither one.
It would not surprise me.
None of those are guaranteed.
Would not completely surprise me. USC, on the other hand, they go to Oregon after this, and then have UCLA at home to finish. So they could lose 2 more games.
They could win 2 big ones, too. If they would beat Oregon, that'd shake some things up.
That would be a very big bounce-back win.
Huge. And I saw some things people are talking about. Maybe that's it for Caleb Williams. After that kind of loss, and you're kind of...
You think he's going to be done now?
I don't know. There's a chance. But also, I think he's a guy that likes playing a team like Oregon, or like he wanted to beat Washington. And I think,
He said, I think, when people were questioning him about that, I think he said he was going to finish out the season.
Yeah, that's probably just social media people trying to make their
That's where it all came from in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's kind of unfortunate that Caleb Williams doesn't say a word about not playing, and a bunch of media guys are down his throat saying, hey, you should sit out. Like, why?
Yeah.
For one, your job is college football media, and you're telling a college football player to sit out.
Yeah. They're trying to tell him it would be best for him to not do it.
And him playing is the reason you have a job.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you're going to go tell him to sit out.
You have a guy like that to write about every week.
It just doesn't make sense.
More Pac-12 action. This one was a little Pac-12 at night action, and Arizona kept it rolling. They beat UCLA 27-10, and Arizona is 6-3 now. A lot of people want them ranked. They've been playing well as of late. They've played well against the top teams in the Pac-12, and they're definitely a team that I think deserves to be ranked just because of how well they've played against the top teams. Yeah, they haven't played great at times against some of the lower teams, but they have played really well against the best. Then more Pac-12 action. We've got Oregon State on the road at Colorado, and Oregon State won 26-19, which I was impressed with Colorado's defense. That's probably one of their better games, if not the best game they've played this year. because Oregon State has a pretty good offense, but they held them to 26. Shador and company didn't play great. The O-line definitely still needs work, but it's just Colorado comes up just short. And, I mean, their program, man, it's close. They're on the fringe. They need to fill in some more spots, get a few more things down on special teams, coaching staff-wise, and they'll be all right. I think they'll be competing well here in the near future.
Yeah, I'm not sure I completely understand the firing of the offensive coordinator when their offense was putting up
Was the best part of their team.
Yeah, they had one of the best passing offenses in the country not with a terrible O-line, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, it is.
And I don't know, that just doesn't make too much sense to me. And they obviously took a hit from it because when you have a different guy calling plays, it just doesn't really flow the same when you've been hearing plays from a guy from a whole season.
Yeah, I would agree. It was an odd decision. Just was very odd, and obviously it didn't work out for him so far. One more game to mention, then I just want to give a little shout out to the Bowling Green boys. They beat Ball State 24-21, and Bowling Green advances to 5-4 on the season. So they look to be putting themselves in bowl eligibility for the second straight season. I know we got the Toledo game coming up soon, which everybody gets excited about, but that's a good win for the fellas, and they'll see if they can keep it rolling. That should be all we have here for episode number 18. That was week 10 was a very fun one. I know there's a lot of fun conference action to end the season here. We know we're going to have the SEC playing the Chattanoogas and whatnot, but besides that, we got a lot of good action coming up. The big one that stands out in my mind upcoming this week is Michigan and Penn State, just because Big Ten-wise for me, that's a big one. We'll see if anything comes out new with the Michigan whole sign-stealing stuff. I know the Big Ten kind of sent them a little warning, they called it, or something, for potential future disciplinary action is what they called it. So I don't really know if anything's going to come of that, but in my opinion, Penn State has a good chance to win this week. Not a better chance than Michigan, but a better chance than people are going to give them. Yeah. They only lost to Ohio State by 8. They've got a great defense. I know they can hold their own in the trenches, which is the main key when you're playing Michigan. So that's the main game sticking out for me, and I'm excited for that one. I don't know. Do you know Notre Dame plays this week?
Just speaking real quick on the Michigan thing, I don't have any direct inside sources or anything, but I would say within the next week we're probably going to hear some very, very drama-filled news, and I think Michigan could be in a lot of trouble here, honestly.
Yeah, it might not be fun for them finding out. I'm holding out. I'm trying. I don't really know enough to say a whole lot about it. I'm just kind of sitting here with a small smile, seeing what happens.
Just from what I've heard, it doesn't look good for Michigan.
Yeah. We appreciate you guys for joining in again this week, and hopefully we will see you guys later this week for the Week 11 preview episode.